Shin Megami Tensei If is often considered to be the black sheep of the mainline SMT series. It is known for weird mechanics, confusing dungeon design, and the Domain of Sloth, which is a dungeon that requires you to run up and down the same hallway for hours. Despite all of that, I actually like this game quite a bit. The atmosphere is great, the combat is more fleshed out than the previous games, and there are a wide variety of new mechanics and items introduced that would become mainstays in the SMT series. Normally, you would be accompanied by one of the game's 4 partners and any demons you have recruited, but what if you wanted to take the credit for saving the school all to yourself? Can you beat Shin Megami Tensei If with only Tamaki? Let's find out. But first, let me go over the rules. I'm only allowed to use Tamaki in battle. If any other party members are forced into my party, they must guard. I'm allowing myself to talk to demons to get myself out of a fight, but usage of them in battle is banned. I'm also allowing the use of demons to cast Destoma, since that just speeds things up. I will be doing both Reiko and Akira's route for this video. And finally, this video will contain spoilers for this game. Like always, I will be leaving timestamps of all the bosses I fight in the description, so if you want to see a specific boss, then look there. Starting up the game, we are greeted by a floating head that is going to ask us personality questions that determine our stat build. But first, it asks us for our name. I go with sub, which is what you should do if you like this video. We then get the option to pick if you're a boy or girl. I picked the girl option for a few reasons. First, I like her character better. Second, putting a girl in the thumbnail gets more views. And third, it actually makes the game harder, since some of the best equipment in this game, like the King Frost set, is male only for some reason. I go through the rest of the personality test and end up getting the speed build. The build doesn't really matter too much for this run, so I didn't answer in any specific ways to get a certain one. We then wake up in the middle of a classroom at school and things immediately start going wrong. Our school has been dragged into the middle of the demon world called the Expanse, and there seems to be no way out. The second we leave the classroom, a girl named Yumi Shirakawa asks us to join her. There are 4 different characters that we can pick to join us. 3 of them are currently unlocked, and 1 of them is locked behind New Game Plus. Each character has their own motivation and goals. Yumi Shirakawa wants to save the school by killing the villain of the game, Hazama, who has taken over the school by controlling demons. Shinji Kuroi, more commonly known as Charlie, wants to escape the school by any means necessary, and his route is often considered to be the easy mode of the game, because you don't even stop Hazama in the end, he just lets you leave because you aren't interfering with his plan. Reiko Akanazawa is our final choice, and the one I went with. Her goal is to save the school by saving Hazama from himself, but most of her motivations aren't clear until the end of the game. Her route is nearly identical to Yumi's route, but there is a bonus dungeon at the end of the game with a harder version of the final boss, which is why I picked it. Before we can leave the school, we need to do a couple of things, like picking our partner and obtaining our comp. I meet up with Reiko and pick her as our partner, and as soon as we leave the room, a Gaki attacks us. Would you believe me if I told you that this singular low-level demon killed me multiple times? This demon is supposed to be fought by you and your partner, and if you do that, then you should easily be able to take it down before it can kill you. But since Reiko isn't doing anything, I have to take extra turns to kill it, giving it extra opportunities to kill me, which it can do in one hit with some attacks. But after a couple of attempts, I managed to take him down with only 4 HP to spare. This game has a mechanic called Guardians, which are kind of like the precursor to Personas. Upon death, depending on how full your Guardian meter was, you can either get a Guardian a tier higher or a tier lower than your current Guardian. Guardians give you bonus stats and can give your partner new magic skills. The reason I bring this up now is because every time your partner dies, a short animation plays where they are brought back to life at full health. This means that no matter what, Reiko will always be alive at the start of a fight. Which isn't a huge deal, but I didn't want her to take too many hits from me, because it kinda defeats the point of the challenge. So for the next 30 minutes I got a debug mode cheat, and tried using it to make her status permanently dead, which didn't work and resulted in a game over screen each time. So I didn't find a solution to that problem, but it isn't too big of a deal and you can't say I didn't try. Anyways, after defeating the demon, we get a comp and head to the school's gym where we run into the first boss of the game, Fawn, and he can do all of my health in just 2 hits. But luckily for us, he is a total glass cannon, and we can take him down in only a few hits ourselves, which I managed to do after a couple of tries, netting us the Ring of Humility, which we will need for later. We go to Otsuki's lab and he tries to prevent us from leaving the school by starting up a fight with us. This is another fight between glass cannons. He only has 40 health, but I have less than that, and my access to healing items at this point in the game is very limited. After not really getting anywhere, I decided to grind up to level 8, and with my increased damage and health, I was able to take him down, allowing us access into the Expanse. Using the Ring of Humility we got earlier, we are allowed access to the Domain of Pride, which is the first real dungeon of this game. This dungeon is about as small and as simple as they come. It has the first town, which allows us to buy armor, guns, and some items. It also has Codebreaker, but the prizes aren't very good in this game, so I didn't bother with it. After navigating to the 5th floor, we run into the boss of this dungeon, Vine. Vine is a major step up from the last fight. His attacks are all very powerful, with the most powerful being his magic attacks, Zionga and Mazionga, which deal most of my health in one hit, and also have a chance to shock me, which can make me lose a turn. He also has Shibabu, which inflicts Bind, an ailment that makes me not able to move for up to 3 turns. The last move in his kit is Dia, which is probably the least threatening. It heals him, but doesn't seem to be for a lot, since on the winning attempt I got against him, he used it a lot and I was still able to take him down quickly. Guns are very effective against him. I use the Gons pistol, which hits 3 to 6 times each hit and does around 7 damage with the chance to crit. After taking him down, he drops the Ring of Restraint, which we can use to go on to the next domain, the Domain of Gluttony. The Domain of Gluttony is very important in this run for reasons I will talk about later. This dungeon is made up of walls that I can't tell a material of. Maybe it's supposed to be plants or slime or something, but I honestly can't tell. This dungeon is very important because it gives us access to the casino, which is going to be very useful for us, as it gives us access to important items that will help us with combat. As of right now, the casino prize pool is kind of lacking, but as we progress throughout the game, more items are added. This dungeon can be kind of confusing. There are tiles that turn you around, which cause you to move in the opposite direction you think you are moving, and each floor has multiple staircases, which can be confusing on return visits when trying to get to a specific spot. On the 7th basement floor, we run into Otsuki again. He has around the same health as Vine, but does a lot less damage than he did, and doesn't really have any threatening moves in his kit to make up for that. When he goes down, we get the Microplasma, which allows us to shrink in size. We can then run into Orcus's kitchen, where we can shrink ourselves down to hide in his food and have him swallow us. Orcus's stomach is a short dungeon filled with demons, and at the end we run into a giant Parasite. Parasite might not have very much HP, but its moveset kind of makes up for that. It can use Acid or Needle Tail, which both damage us and can inflict poison, Wire Breath, which inflicts bind, and finally Rest, which if you watched my last video you would know is a pain in the ass. How Rest works is that it heals 15% of a boss's HP each time it's used, and bosses sometimes love to spam it, which can practically reset a fight in the span of a few turns. Luckily for me though, I was able to take him down in only a couple of attempts, freeing our principal from Orcus and netting us the Ring of Diligence, allowing us to move on to the infamous Domain of Sloth. If this game is known for one thing, it's being the inspiration for the Persona series, but if it's known for another thing, it's how infamous this dungeon is. The premise for this dungeon is that Hazama is punishing students for their laziness by having them dig tunnels, and in one of those tunnels is the item we need to move on. The way you access that item is what makes this dungeon so infamous. To get the item needed to move on, we need to wait 6 full moon cycles for the students to finish digging, which may not sound bad, but that can be hours of gameplay with all the encounters you face during the process. This dungeon is why I allowed the use of Istoma, because it took the process of doing this normally, which would take around 2 hours, to around 10 minutes with the combination of Istoma and emulator speedups. The spell Istoma does nothing but stop random encounters that are lower than your current level, and since I was higher level than everything, I faced no encounters. Funnily enough, the boss of this dungeon is entirely optional. You can just get the item you need to leave and go, but I'm not going to be doing that. The boss is Balaam, who is definitely the hardest boss so far. He has 455 HP, and each of my hits only does around 7 damage. Granted, I do hit multiple times in a turn, but it's still not a lot of damage to be dealing. He has a pretty stacked moveset, his most threatening moves being Zionga, which deals a lot of damage and can shock me, and Paralyze, which can paralyze me. And if that happens, I instantly lose, since I can't move and I can't cure the ailment by myself. This is where I would like to introduce you guys to one of the most important items of this challenge. If we go back to the casino and the Domain of Gluttony after acquiring the Ring of Diligence, we get access to more items. the most important being the Rasta candy, which when used increases all of your party's stats by 1 stage. This is basically an item version of the spell Luster Candy from more modern SMT games. It feels amazing actually being able to use buffs in one of these challenge runs for once, since in my last 2 videos I didn't have that luxury. If we head back to Balaam and buff ourselves, we do much more damage than before, but there are still 2 problems we face. The first problem is that he has Dakaja, which removes all of our buffs, and although he doesn't seem to spam it, it's still a problem. The second problem is actually seemingly a glitch with how buffing works in this game. Unlike modern SMT games, there is seemingly no limit to how many times you can buff. There is no already in effect text that shows up when you buff too much. In many cases, buffing over 2 to 3 times causes the reverse effect and can end up with you dealing little to no damage at all, almost like you fell off the damage scale and ended back up at the bottom. I like to call this glitch overbuffing, and it's present in this game and from my personal experience also seemingly a thing in SMT2. This makes it so I have to be very cautious when buffing, and sometimes I won't be able to get the most damage out due to fear of overbuffing. Anyways, with that long explanation over, let's get back to the fight. My strategy for this fight was kind of all over the place. I would buff up a few sages and then fight him with my sword and gun. The buffs also helped me dodge and resist his attacks, but it was really annoying when he used Dakaja. Sometimes he would debuff me, and as I was trying to rebuild my buffs, he would spam Dakaja. I lost multiple times due to running out of Rasta candies, but after a while I was lucky enough to take him down. After I took him down, I'd take the time to loot the dungeon and grab the Ring of Tolerance, which we can use to move on to the Domain of Envy. The Domain of Envy is probably the second most confusing dungeon in the game, second only to the final dungeon. This dungeon is filled with warps, dark rooms, no comp rooms which don't allow you to use your map, and the worst of all, no comp rooms that are dark, which means you can't see anything, or use your map to navigate, so you kind of just have to fumble around in the dark until you find an exit. Near the beginning of the dungeon, a mysterious dude who was sent by Hazama walks up to us and charms Reiko, causing her to run off without us. Not that it mattered, I mean we don't use her anyways. This dungeon is home to the best sword in the game, but we can't get it quite yet, so I'll come back to that later. When we get to the boss room of this dungeon, we run into Reiko and the man from earlier. Reiko is seemingly madly in love with him, and you are given the option to give up on her or not. If you give up on her, you're warped back to the start of the dungeon, showing you made the wrong choice. If you don't give up on her, the guy turns into Lilith and starts up a fight with you. This fight seems hard, and probably is for most situations, but I figured something out during this fight that I never realized before. She casted Mudun on me a number of times, but I reflected the attack each time, which made me confused. Then I realized it was my Guardian's affinity that was protecting me, since my Guardian nulls curse attacks. I'm still not 100% sure that this is what was happening, but it allowed me to avoid death from her Mudo attacks. There still is one problem though. Her physical attacks hit like a truck. I mean, she hits 2 to 4 times, and each hit can do upwards of 70 damage. I was able to lower the amount she does per hit drastically by using Rasta candies, and since she can't erase my buffs, I didn't have to worry too much about my status, allowing me to easily defeat her with gun attacks. After the fight, Reiko rejoins us and we get the Ring of Unselfishness, but we can't move on to the next dungeon quite yet. We run into Otsuki again and he starts up a fight with us. My gun attacks are doing amazing damage to him, but his attacks can do a lot of damage to me, and he can hit 2 to 3 times per turn. During the Lilith fight, I used up the last of my Rasta candies that I had on me, and I didn't want to have to go all the way back to the Domain of Gluttony to get more, so I kept trying to beat him without them. But after a while, I gave up and left to resupply. The time it took to do that and get back was no joke like 25 minutes. The common sentiment when playing this game is that navigating the dungeons is harder than the bosses themselves, and although for this run that's not entirely true, it still is a pain to get through some of them. After coming back with the Rasta candies, the fight did get a lot easier, and I was finally able to gun him down, allowing us access to the penultimate dungeon of the game, the Domain of Greed. The Domain of Greed is the last of the sin-themed dungeons, and has a pretty big layout, but it's not too confusing if you use a map. The dungeon has a lot of things, like a town, casino, and tons of treasure. The main gimmick of this dungeon is that the more treasure you take, the harder the boss of the dungeon will be. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't open any of the treasure boxes you see throughout the dungeon. When I say that, I'm only referring to the room on the 3rd floor with 15 consecutive treasure chests. You face the boss's weakest form if you take 0 to 3 of the chests, and its strongest if you take all 15, with 6 other forms in the middle totaling 8 forms. If you don't take much treasure, the boss is a total joke that can hardly land a scratch on you, and he can be killed by a light breeze. But if you decide to be greedy, the boss gets over 6,000 HP, is immune to sword and gun attacks, and has a moveset that fits its terrifying image. Guess which version I fought for this video? I mean, if you know me, is that really a question? You may be wondering how the hell I'm going to kill this thing, since it's immune to both sword and gun attacks, and Tamaki can't use magic. Well, one thing it isn't immune to is fire, and I know one sword that is fire type. None other than the best sword in the game, the Hino Kagetsuchi, which roughly translates to the Fire of Kagetsuchi. Kagetsuchi being the Shinto god of fire and destruction. Now, I mentioned the sword was in the domain of envy, but how do you actually get it? On the 4th floor during the warp maze, when you are transported to warp 20, which is the one at the bottom right of the screen, you can go left to continue, or you can go straight and take a different warp, which leads to the room containing the Hino Kagetsuchi. To actually pull the sword from the pedestal, we need to have one of the top 3 guardians, which is dependent on what gender you pick, and the results from the quiz you take at the beginning of the game. The easiest way to find out what guardians you need for this is to search up a list of the guardians in the game, and then filter by what gender you picked and what quiz results you got. Since I picked Tamaki and got the speed results, I can use Garuda, Susanoo, or Kali. Since I had the right guardian, I was able to pull the sword out, giving us the best sword in the game. A massive upgrade from our current sword. I headed back to Chefei, now actually able to put up a fight against him. He has a tricky to deal with moveset and can inflict a variety of ailments like close, bind, paralyze, and sleep, and also has Mudun, which has a high chance of instantly killing me, and my current guardian Garuda doesn't resist curse attacks. But there is one thing I can use to stop him from killing me. There is an item called a Final Guard, which prevents one instant kill attack from affecting you. And with that, to prevent instant death attacks and Rasa candies to lower the damage from his regular attacks, he could barely lay a finger on me. Also, the Hino Kagetsuchi was doing around 250 damage a hit, and it can hit up to 7 times in one turn, which allowed me to take down Chefei pretty easily. He drops the Ring of Kindness, but Otsuki grabs it and runs off to his lab, where we chase him down for one final fight. This fight is much easier than the previous, which is probably because Atlas devs had no way of anticipating which version of Chefei the player would go against, so they wanted to make Otsuki's power somewhere in the middle. I would have beaten him on my first try, but I accidentally overbuffed, causing me to go from dealing upwards of 300 damage a hit to only 2 damage a hit. So I decided to die intentionally as a way of restarting the fight. On my very next attempt, he went down easily, netting us the Ring of Kindness, which allows us access to the final dungeon, the upper floors of Karukazoka High School, where Hazama is.
Roll the windows up.
What's going on?
Roll the windows up, hurry! It fucking crashed! He's broke, he's homeless, he's gonna try to ask for money. Roll the windows up.
This is the final dungeon of the game and is by far the most complicated. I mean, just look at the map of this dungeon. It has warps, pitfalls, one-way walls, and a maze-like layout that makes it difficult to navigate, even with a map. Before getting into the dungeon proper, I decided to grind my way up to the best guardian in my class, Kali, so that I could go into the final boss with the best possible stats. And after making it all the way to the 11th floor, we can finally face Hazama. The Demon Emperor Hazama has 20,000 HP, which is more than Yahweh by quite a bit. He has attacks like Bodhisattva's Palm and Soul Smasher, which can deal a lot of damage, along with Debilitate, which lowers all of our stats by 1 stage. Due to Debilitate, I had to restore my buffs a lot, which caused me to overbuff a few times. But it's not the worst thing ever, since you are overbuffed and he casts Debilitate, he lowers your stats enough to put you back on top. His amount of health may seem threatening at first, but with the Hino Kagetsuchi we deal damage in the thousands nearly every turn. There's also another item that comes in very useful in this fight called the Decoy Sphere, which when used automatically revives Tamaki at half health upon death. You might be thinking an item like that would be rare due to how good it is, but really you can just buy it from the shop in the Domain of Greed for 1,200 Maka, making it incredibly easy to get. With the immense amount of damage I was doing and the arsenal of great support items I had, I was able to take down Hazama pretty easily. But that wasn't the real final boss. Upon defeat, Hazama drops the Ring of Salvation, which allows us access into Hazama's mind for one last short dungeon called the Mental World. Across this dungeon there are many different warps and 5 different rooms where you can see flashbacks at different points in Hazama's life. We find that Hazama has always felt alone and that everyone always saw him as a weirdo. In one of them, he gives a love letter to a girl, and as soon as he leaves the room, she tears it up and laughs with her friend about it. The last one is the most serious and depicts Hazama as a small child being separated from his mom and sister due to a divorce between his mother and father, also revealing to us that Reiko is none other than Hazama's sister, which is why she feels so inclined to help him out. We make it to the center of his mind and see Hazama once more, where we can face off against his final form. This is Hazama's warped mind form. It has a very strong kit with high damaging moves like Thunder Kick, Soul Cluster, which is an instant kill move with 100% accuracy, and moves that will annoy us like Debilitate, Dekaja, and Marin Karin. He also has Hamaon, which is another instant kill move, but human characters have an innate immunity to the Expel line of skills, so we don't have to worry about it. He also has 30,000 health, which is 10,000 more than his last form, and nearly double that of the final boss of the last game. My strategy for this fight was as follows. I always wanted to have a final guard up as protection against Soul Cluster. I also always wanted to remain buffed for higher attack and defense, along with having a decoy sphere up in case my HP got low and I wasn't able to heal. I also wanted to be quick since I had a limited amount of healing items and final guards. This is a long fight, taking about 20 minutes per attempt, and is a total balancing act with all the things you have to maintain. But after a while of attempts, I was able to take down Hazama once and for all. After the fight, Hazama and Reiko reunite, and Reiko promises to always be there for him. We are then informed by Reiko's voice that the twisted spirit that turned Hazama into the Emperor is back to normal, so we can't remain in his mind and we have to hurry to the exit. Don't worry though, this is a scripted sequence, and we move automatically towards the exit. Reiko mentions to us that Hazama is a good kid at heart, but nobody was ever there for him. She doesn't expect anyone to forgive him, but she reassures us that this will never happen again. Reiko thanks us for helping her, and we finally escape the mental world. This game actually has something at the end that I think is cool. You're given the option to release your demons, and they all have their own goodbye messages that they say to you upon release. We return to school back at level 1, and are finally able to leave, where life returns to normal. Well, at least most students will go on to live a normal life. If you've played Persona 1 or 2, you might know that Tamaki is actually in both of those games. In Persona 1, she is a transfer student to the high school where that game takes place, and dodges any questions about her old school. She also meets Tadashi Satomi, who she falls in love with. In Persona 2, she's still dating Tadashi, and has a job at the Kuzunoha Detective Agency, where she can help the main party by mailing in magazine sweepstakes for them. Anyways, now that we have defeated Hazama and Reiko's route, it's time to start Akira's route, which we can now play since we've beaten the game. This time during the personality quiz, I answered the questions intentionally to try and get the strength build. We say no to everyone else and join up with Akira, who says he knows a way out through the manhole in the janitor's office. The janitor is also just Okamoto from SMT2, but he's wearing pink instead of green. We take the manhole, and instead of it leading to the outside, we fall down a long way and end up in the Nomos of Earth, which is the bottom floor of the Tower of Confinement, which is where the entirety of Akira's route takes place. We run into Hazama, who attacks us and leaves us for dead. Akira is about to die, but a demon named Amon fuses with him, giving him life and causing all of his stats to go up by 1. The Nomos of Earth is huge. It's so big that the map on GameFAQs needed 2 parts just to show the whole thing. Most floors have multiple sets of stairs, which makes navigation very confusing. The dungeon is also so huge it takes a really long time just to get to some places within it. This route also introduces a new feature called mausoleums, which contains some loot along with a ridiculously powered demon that you can try to fight or recruit. I just ignored these since I can't use demons for this run and they would all kick my ass if I tried fighting them. We want to go to floor B2 to get the blue key, which we need to unlock the door to the next Nomos. On floor B1 you can also open up the geyser, which allows for fast travel. But as you leave, you have to fight an ogre who is basically a mini-boss. His attacks do a lot of damage, and I had no idea how I was going to beat this guy, but I realized he isn't immune to poison, and by using an item called a poison arrow, I was able to poison him, which drastically lowers his attack, allowing me to beat him. Now that we have the key, we can go up to the top floor and unlock the Gate of Djoser, where we fight up against the first real boss of this run, Apaosha. Apaosha is one hell of a first boss, and is incredibly hard to deal with, and is also very luck dependent. At this point in the game, not much is open to us. There's no casino yet, and item shops only have a limited selection. So items like final guards and Rasa candies are not options for me yet. Apaosha also repels gun attacks, which sucks for me since my current gun is way better than my sword. I would grind a little bit, then attempt him, over and over again, until I decided just to hunker down and try beating him. This took me a very long time, and I can only rely on luck. No ounce of strategy was used in this fight. All I did was use my sword and heal, which are my only 2 options in terms of strategy. And after around 2 hours of attempts, this happened. With Apaosha dead, we can move on to the first Nomos. This dungeon isn't too bad to get around. It has some dark rooms, but the hardest part is probably the random encounters which were kicking my ass. The top floor of this dungeon has a town, but none of the residents are there and all the shops are closed, including the casino, which greatly disappointed me. To get all the shops to open, we need to kill the boss of this area, Bushyasta, who is terrorizing the town. If you've been looking at how much time is left in this video, you probably know what I'm about to say. I am 99% sure that this fight is impossible to beat with just Tamaki. There are 3 main problems we face in this fight. The first being that despite only being the second boss of the route, she has 5050 HP. The second problem is that I only deal 4 damage per hit with my gun. I can hit multiple times, but even with that, the damage is still terrible. And lastly, Bushyasta can inflict me with debuffs like Tarunda and Rakunda, which lower my attack and defense, along with being able to paralyze me, which is an instant loss. I used a cheat code to increase my level to 99, and even then the fight was hardly any easier. Due to the lack of equipment I have access to at this point in the game, I believe this fight is impossible or extremely improbable to win with just Tamaki. Before I started this run, I thought there was going to be next to no challenge for me to face when it came to the bosses in this game. That was most likely because in my past playthrough I was more focused on getting through the dungeons than I was worrying about the bosses. This game provided a good challenge for me and made me utilize mechanics and items I had never thought of before, and taught me new things about the game itself. So can you beat Shin Megami Tensei If with only Tamaki? Well, kinda. Reiko's route is possible in its entirety, but the same cannot be said for Akira's route, although feel free to prove me wrong. If there's a way to beat Bushyasta with just Tamaki, I would be more than happy to hear about it. I would recommend this challenge to anyone who likes this game and wants to challenge themselves. If you like this video, then I would appreciate it if you subscribed. I have many other videos just like this on my channel, and I'm not stopping anytime soon. As always, if you guys have any ideas for challenge runs, I would love to hear them in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.